Okay, so to get us started, when I say the word procurement, what do you think of? And you can't say falling asleep. Cringe. What else? Slow, pain. Well, we want to spend some time together to try to assuage you that there are some other ways to feel. So I'm going to do an before and after quiz to see if you feel better. And before I start, I want to know just a little bit about the audience. So how many people work in government here? How many people are in charge of procurement? Well, we've got one. We've got three targets right there. How many people are startups that try to get money from government? Okay. How many people are NGOs, media, foundations, and other? Any others? Academics. Academics, mostly academics. What are the others? Just weird, random people, yeah? Researchers, okay. So we're going to talk about how government can spend less but solve more. Quickly, just a little bit, I'm the co-founder of a company called Apolitical, and we're a global impact network for people in government. So we get up every day thinking about how to make your life easier, not because we care about your life, although we do, but if we make your life easier, then citizens' lives get better. So how many people use TripAdvisor? LinkedIn. So that's basically what we are, is you pull together TripAdvisor plus LinkedIn, and that's our platform. And we are moving into the marketplace, which I'll tell you about. We have more than 150 countries using us on a regular basis, everyone from ministers to mayors to heads of state. And we're free, which is important. Here's what our platform looks like. One of the things we do is we have innovators and experts from around the world on different topics. So women's empowerment, refugees. So if you are an expert or innovator, let me know to see if we should be featuring you. And here are some of the ecosystems that we have deep interest in. I've really learned a lot the last couple of hours, potential partners for us on things like digital ID and food. So thank you for all of your work. I'm going to switch it over. We're a duet. We're not going to dance. We didn't know each other that well, but we're going to go back and forth a little bit from the platform perspective to the government perspective. So, Jess.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Jess McEvoy. I'm a director for a part of the UK government called Government Digital Services. I don't know how many people have heard of that organisation. OK, good. One of the products that we have is a thing called the Digital Marketplace. So this is a set of frameworks that allow anyone in government to more straightforwardly buy digital and technology products from the market. So we also, and this will become important later, but we also advise on all technology and digital spend. So anyone in government who wants to spend any money whatsoever on anything that's digital has to come to my department and ask if they can, and they have to come at a very early stage. And anyone who wants to spend over, I think, about £1 million on technology also has to come back to us and talk to us about the plan. So back in 2009, we were spending about £16 billion on technology. The IT costs, and most of that was going to about 5 companies. And that's, it's 1% of our economy, which, in the grand scheme of things, it's just 1%, but it's a huge amount of spend for the UK government, and it's a huge amount to go to just 5 companies in the UK. And since we implemented the digital marketplace, which I will talk a little bit about later, in year 1, we saved 312 million. In year 2, 500 million. And by year 3, we'd saved $1 billion just by having a faster way to procure and controls on what money was being spent on.
So that was the show me the money slide. They saved a lot of money. So we're going to come back and go a little bit deeper on how they did that. But I wanted to test your procurement knowledge, okay? So this is old school. You just put hands up and then down. So what is the approximate size of the global procurement market? How many people think A, 14 trillion? B, 8 trillion? C, 6? Or D, 4? 8 trillion. It's a lot of money. $8 trillion. OK. What % of a national GDP is generally spent on procurement? A, 5 to 10. Raise them high. It's a little hot, I know. It might be a little uncomfortable. B, 10 to 15. C, 15 to 20. Or D, 20 to 25. You're all over the board. It's 10 to 15%. Just think about that. 10 to 15% of GDP is spent on buying services, on procurement. This is a US number. So the average, so there's this myth that like it takes a really long time to work with government, but once you're in forever. This is all changing because there is a procurement revolution happening. Can you say it? Procurement revolution. He has a hard time. He's not going to say it. Maybe at the end. So the average sales cycle is changing for GovTech. This is in the US. Is it A, 354 days? B, 152? Please play along. C, 86? Or D, 63? Okay, 86. Much, much lower than many people think. When we talk to a lot of VCs, they're like, oh, we don't fund GovTech stuff because it takes too long to do procurement. That number is dropping, which really means you have a different ecosystem of the type of companies. Okay, this is for the real geeks in there. How did the Ukraine's health service save $37 million a year on buying medication? Is it A, budget restructuring, our favorite thing to do? B, privatizing? I've lost you. C, a price comparison app. Everybody loves an app. Okay, or D, new procurement regulations. Oh boy. It was a price comparison app. Now this is a point I'm trying to make, is that people often think, now maybe they had to do some procurement regulations to get to the app, but often they think the first thing we have to do is change the laws. Sometimes you do, but one of the trends we're seeing is there's carve-outs in procurement to do things like try a price comparison app. $37 million a year for an app saved. Number 5, how long did it take the US to meet its target of handing 5% of its spending on contractors to women-owned businesses? So if you think about this $8 trillion, that's a huge social engineering machine that the government sits on. So you can use it to do things like support women and people who normally don't get procurement. So how long did it take? 6 months? 20 years? 5 years? It hasn't been met. Look at all the pessimists in the room. 20 years. So they're working, but that's 5%. So a lot more work to go. How much would Canada's new gender-based procurement spending target direct towards women-owned businesses? 30, 10, 50, 60? 30 billion. So really using procurement as a way to change. How many cities now run a startup and residence program? 31. Any of you in a startup residence program or in a city that has one? Not yet. What is the estimated cost we're here for sustainable development of implementing the SDGs and state spending and aid? Anyone know the answer? It's 3.3 to 4.5 trillion. So if we don't tap government procurement, it's not going to happen. We just won't meet the SDGs. So every day we're looking at trends going on. So I want to tell you some of the trends that we're seeing. There is a revolution going on in procurement. People are saying we can't solve new problems with our current procurement situation, and there are old problems that can be solved in new ways. So what's going on? Well, people are really looking at how to use this money to have sustainable and innovative procurement. So this is on a story that we wrote on how governments are opening up this money for women by doing earmarks around women. And then Toronto used its purchase power to really lift minorities out of poverty. So thinking about not just what you're funding, but how you're funding through the procurement. Circular procurement. Who knows what circular economy is? There's a Dane, okay, many of you. So government's saying, if we have this taxpayer money that is supposed to make the world a better place, are we procuring with a circular mind? Is it better for the environment, or are we creating part of the problem that then we have to pay to clean up? So this is an example of a very pioneering Dutch middle manager, civil servant, who came with an idea on funding some circular economy work. Startup in residence, it's not a be-all, end-all. It's not like if you have a startup in residence, everything's going to be fine, but it is helping infuse a mentality. So here is an example that we write about how public servants are hacking procurement and innovation, often co-creating what that procurement should look like. The biggest problem we hear with procurement is there's procurement officers who set rules and regulations without ever talking to any company who might be able to fulfill that. So by the time the regulations go out the door, there's no one who can actually fulfill it. So if you co-create some of this in a way that's still transparent, so it's not big giveaways, but still transparent, you get better outcomes. Which leads me to number 4, outcome-based funding. So instead of just paying people to talk to people or deliver services, pay on results. This is really going on a lot in Australia, a lot in the UK, a bit in the US, and a bunch with social impact bonds. Anyone in a social impact bond working on one? I don't know if there are any in Germany. Are there any social impact bonds in Germany? I don't think so. I'm not saying they're a panacea, but they're a really good way to get money out the door for outcomes versus inputs, which is what we want. And then looking beyond the usual suspect. And this is why I think there are so many startups in the room that we're excited to be working with, is that many times, this was a big scandal in the UK, government makes a long-term big contract to a big company, and guess what? That company really screws it up or goes bankrupt. And then you have, as we say in English, I don't know what it is in German, all your eggs in one basket. What is that in German? Same thing? All your eggs in one basket just means you dropped all of your eggs. So this is why working with startups and small and medium-sized businesses is the better way to go. Now let me give you over to someone who's done this. Within GDS, they've saved a lot of money, and they've also increased outcomes for citizens. So Jess.
So buying in government is really hard, and I'm sure anyone who's interacted with it can attest to that. And what the digital marketplace did was look at, it was kind of part of a bigger piece of work that the UK was doing at the time, which was to understand what is it going to take to actually really transform digital government. And I think it's foolish to look at digital transformation without thinking about how do you buy things. Because if you don't target how you buy things, you really can't actually get the transformation going. You can't get the outcomes that you need when you need them. You can't get the teams in place that you need to build the services. So in 2009, this is what those 5 suppliers that I talked about who were getting all of that money looked like. And they were all based in the southeast of England. In 2012, we implemented the digital marketplace for the first time as part of a transformation project that we were doing in government digital services. And it was all designed to enable these exemplar services. So exemplar services were things that we were transforming to show the rest of government how do you do it. So in terms of how we did it, we focused on making sure that the government, the way that procurement was done in government changed so that we had frameworks that you could buy outcomes, you could buy people, you could do all of this much more quickly, but you also have to make sure that government's making good decisions, so you really have to focus on the humans who are making the procurement decisions inside a government as well. So I don't know if this is very familiar, but this is the way that we do all digital service design in the UK. And what that means is right at that left-hand side, we get to intervene in a process that we call spend controls. And in the spend control process, we get to say whether or not the thing that a certain part of government wants to do, the thing that they want to spend money on, is a good idea or a bad idea. And that was in a response to the fact that there are many parts of government that don't really understand enough about the technology that they need in order to make a sensible decision. So we intervene at all of those points all the way along. And it's all underpinned by engagement that happens all the way through. And we get to see some interesting things as we do that, like horse passport services, where we have to make procurement decisions. We're not always the experts in the room, but we can advise on the technology. And today, this is what the digital marketplace looks like. So we've now got 488,000 suppliers, and a huge number of them are small to medium enterprises. So SME stands for small to medium enterprise. That means you have to be a small business, not a huge global player. So we've been able to disrupt the kind of 5 big players in the IT market in the UK. The 2018 number, that refers to the number of humans that we can bring in very quickly to do work, or teams. And we've started to take it digital as well, global as well. So what we tend to do in GDS is when we build some piece of technology that we think is really useful, we try to turn it into a platform that can then be reused by other governments. So what we've started doing is working through the OECD with Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Chile on how can we put a network in place that lets us bridge between those countries and start as a kind of a global network for digital procurement.
So if you were to ask my 20-year-old self, are you going to be spending your life on a stage in Frankfurt at a GIZ conference talking about the procurement revolution, I would have said, you're kidding. Like, I don't even know what procurement is. I am so bullish on procurement and what is going on around the world. This is $8 trillion. It's big money that, by the way, we get from our citizens. And if we do not figure out how to spend it better, more efficiently, and maybe less so we can deploy it differently, we're really, really missing out on a big opportunity. And you in government, you are not alone. There are people around the world asking these exact same questions. Jess is an expert. There are others. And if you're a startup or an SME saying, I've got a great idea, I can't get anyone's attention to fund me, even though what we do is cheaper, faster, and better, how do I connect in government? And one of the things we're trying to do is help solve that problem, very passionately trying to figure it out. Because if we cannot, if we just wait for people to follow rules and do things the way they are versus try new things, we won't solve the SDGs, that is for sure. Jess, last word? Yeah,
I think one of the things that's really important that everyone can step into, whether or not they're a government buyer, whether they're a seller, is that you can, if there isn't a simple mechanism to buy the thing that you want, you can disrupt it, not necessarily even through building a whole digital marketplace. You can just create new frameworks for buying the exact thing that you want. So about 6 years ago, when government in the UK wanted to buy a specific type of identity product from the market, we looked globally to see if there was a product that we wanted. It didn't exist, so we wrote a framework saying, this is what we're going to buy. Any of you can compete globally to get onto this framework, but we're not buying anything different to this. And you have to disrupt the actual mechanism for procuring. You have to disrupt what the sellers also want to say, this is the product that you use for this solution. If government wants something different, then you have to step up and say it and make a mechanism happen that allows it to be swift and exactly what you need for your endpoint.
Do you believe me there's a procurement revolution going on? Yes. Are you part of it? Yes. $8 trillion. Okay, how are you feeling now? What's your word? Much better. Jakob? Yay. We're going to be in the glass house. We'd love to go a little bit deeper and talk to some of you who are geeking out with your heart to make this work better for people on the planet. So thank you very much. Thank you.